I spent 4 years in prison, and that was horrible. I'll never get those years back.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, falsely convicted of murder.
Amanda Knox. She's the 22-year-old exchange student from Seattle charged with her roommate's gruesome murder.
I was Foxy Noxy, the monster. When they pronounced guilty, the world crumbled beneath me.
Thrown in a foreign prison.
I was hit, I was screamed at.
Has it changed you forever?
They took my freedom. They couldn't take who I was.
Now,
there are people in prison who have been inside longer than I've been alive.
she helps others who claim wrongful conviction.
Rodney has spent 22 years in prison. This is a lifetime that people are losing.
And an incredible update.
There is breaking news tonight in Texas. The state's highest criminal court halted the execution of inmate Rodney Reed.
As the news broke Friday afternoon, the Rodney Reed camp celebrated the decision that saved his life.
You're the wrong guy to get mad, I'll tell you what. And they got you mad, so I want to give you a round of applause on that.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. Okay, I want you to imagine something for me. Imagine just for a second spending years of your life behind bars, locked in a cage, and in some cases, facing death. And then think about the fact that it's for a crime that you know you did not commit. Well, our guest today lived that nightmare. Amanda Knox was dubbed Foxy Noxy by the press. It was one of the most infamous cases of wrongful conviction. She's here today. Here's a look back at her story.
It was a case that gripped the world back in 2007.
On November 2nd, the body of Amanda's British roommate, 21-year-old Meredith Kircher, is discovered behind a locked door.
Within days, the suspicions of Italian investigators turned to one of her roommates, 20-year-old Amanda Knox. Her boyfriend, Raffaele Solicito, who she claimed to have spent the evening with.
Police zeroed in on them as potential suspects, finding their behavior odd.
One Italian commentator described her as having the face of an angel, but the eyes of a killer. Media interest, both Italian and international, was intense throughout the trial, fed by headlines that labeled Ms. Knox Foxy Noxy.
Images of Amanda with her boyfriend, Raffaele Solicito, taken just outside the murder scene, and the next day at a lingerie store, were used to define and condemn her.
Prosecutors allege that Kircher died during what began as a sex game.
Both Knox and Solicito insist they are innocent. But prosecutors say that Knox's DNA was on the knife handle, and Solicito's DNA was found on Kircher's bra. In just 1 week, Seattle-born Amanda Knox will stand trial in an Italian court.
Tonight, jurors delivered a guilty verdict against Amanda Knox. Her former boyfriend was also found guilty.
Amanda is sentenced to 26 years in prison.
Well, Amanda appealed. She refused to give up on her chance at freedom, and eventually she got it. But it wasn't without a lot of back and forth and a lot of international drama.
Did Amanda Knox do it? When it comes to an appeal, we've heard a lot that Amanda Knox could have a much better chance at an appeal there than she would in the United States.
The case has completely fallen away. There was never any real DNA evidence, no reliable eyewitnesses.
Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solicito have been acquitted of the murder of Meredith Kircher. For nearly 4 years, they've been in prison.
A scientific panel appointed by the court finds that the DNA used to convict Amanda is unreliable. Knox returned to her hometown of Seattle, a free woman. But last January, Italy's highest appeals court found the pair guilty again.
And nobody was expecting the judge today to overturn that acquittal. Everybody's saying, well, we thought that he was all over.
If the court decides to uphold its conviction, Italy could ask the U.S. to extradite Knox from Seattle.
They'll have to catch me and pull me back, kicking and screaming.
There is relief this morning for Amanda Knox. Yesterday, Italy's highest court overturned her murder conviction. Knox and her ex-boyfriend were twice convicted and now twice acquitted.
I'm incredibly grateful for what has happened, for the justice I've received, for the support that I've had from everyone. You saved my life.
Well, Amanda is here today because she is passionate about a case that I have been tirelessly fighting for. The case of death row inmate Rodney Reed. His story has grabbed America's attention. After more than 2 decades behind bars, Reed was facing execution, despite the fact that multiple witnesses have come forward with evidence that may prove his innocence. I have been an advocate for Rodney Reed, and I sat down with him on death row for an exclusive interview. I have since made it my mission to bring his case into the spotlight.
An execution date now set for Texas death row inmate Rodney Reed.
Reed was convicted of the rape and murder of 19-year-old Stacy Stites. That crime happened in 1996.
Reed is black. The 19-year-old victim was a white woman. Reed's supporters believe race played a part in the verdict and that DNA of his semen in Stacy Stites' body was from several hours prior to her death. Reed's defense was not allowed to question several DNA issues in this case.
When DNA was found in Stacy that matched Rodney Reed, the prosecution told the jury that Rodney was the murderer. But what if it's not that simple? I traveled to Livingston, Texas, to death row to visit Rodney Reed. Did you rape and murder Stacy Stites?
No, I absolutely do not. I didn't do this crime, and here they are trying to take my life.
He's accused of rape and murder, and sure enough, his sperm is inside her body. That seems pretty damning.
Until you start looking at the totality of the relationship between Rodney and Stacy.
How many times do you two see each other?
Some weeks I would see her maybe once or twice a week.
Did other people know you were having a relationship with her?
Yes, friends and family members of mine.
Do you know Alicia Slater?
No, I don't.
Stacy and I hung out at work. She wasn't that excited to get married because she was sleeping with a black guy named Rodney. I was, wow, Stacy, you need to be careful.
So you have no doubt that Stacy was in a relationship with Rodney?
I have no doubt.
This is a female engaged to a cop, a white cop.
At the time of her death, Stacy was living with her boyfriend, Jimmy Fennell.
Jimmy Fennell was initially the key suspect in this case.
Did he ever have an inkling that you were in a relationship with her?
He told me, "You're gonna pay."
So it was a clear threat.
I took it that way.
None of this is what was told to the jury.
I think this case is a prime example why they should abolish the death penalty.
That's right.
Because it is so corrupt. It is racist. It is biased. And all those things have played a major role in my brother's case.
Do you believe he's going to be set free?
Yes, I do. I have to hold on to that.
There is breaking news tonight in Texas. The state's highest criminal court halted the execution of inmate Rodney Reed. New evidence has raised questions about the case.
Are you glad that you've done this interview?
Yes, I am. I appreciate it.
I'm glad we did this. For telling us we have to stop. We will stay in touch. God bless you.
I appreciate you, Doc.
Thank you. Please welcome Amanda Knox.
Thank you for covering this case.
Well, thank you for being here to help with it and really put a face and some human experience to this.
Absolutely. I don't know what it's like to have a week left to live, potentially, right. Thank goodness. But I can tell you that the experience of having the world redefine your reality and who you are and decide your fate is the biggest existential crisis that a person can have.
Take us through the moment that you're standing there knowing that you've not done this crime and hear them announce guilty.
I walked into that courtroom after having spent 2 years in prison already. There had been headlines after headlines in the international media deciding what kind of person I was, Foxy Noxy, the monster. And up until that moment, I thought, this is all nonsense. And by the end of this verdict, I'm going to walk home. That's what my family always believed. And when they pronounced colpevole, guilty, I remember not being able to hear anymore. There was this pounding in my head as the world sort of crumbled beneath me, and I was immediately put on suicide watch.
Did you think about taking your own life at that point?
My thoughts about suicide came later, when I had the moment to sit there with myself and think, oh, this is my life. Is this life worth living?
How heavily did it weigh on you that people would actually look at you and think that you cut someone's throat? And later...
People think that, like, hearing the guilty verdict was the worst experience of my life. No, my interrogation was the scariest, worst experience of my life.
All along, Knox's boyfriend at the time, Rafael Solecito, has defended Amanda as he faces the prospect of prison once again. Signs he could be distancing himself a bit.
There's nothing against me. In my case, I really did nothing wrong. I don't want to pay for someone else's peculiar behavior.
How heavily did it weigh on you that people in the public would actually look at you and think that you cut someone's throat?
It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is a story that people are telling themselves and projecting their worst fears and fantasies onto you. I felt like a blank screen, and anybody could decide who I was in their own mind.
Was there ever a point where you just said, okay, screw it. Think I'm bad, I'll just be bad?
It was bad enough that they took my life and they took my freedom. They couldn't take who I was.
Rodney was on death watch, on death row, which means somebody sits in front of his 6x10 24 hours a day with the lights on. It's never dark. They never take their eyes off him because they don't want him to kill himself before they have the chance to kill him.
Which, is that person there to be human with him, or are they just staying in their role and staying distant?
What was the biggest adjustment psychologically, emotionally, that you had to accommodate?
You know, I'm interested. I keep hoping that Rodney gets this chance. It was almost as hard to reintegrate back into free society as it was to integrate into unfree society.
Really?
Yes. Having your whole life regulated down to you can't take a shower without someone monitoring you changes you. And it is a challenge to go back into the world that is forever changed. You can't go back to who you were. You have to try to make meaning and sense out of what happened to you, which so often is meaningless and senseless.
Why is he not angry? I talked to him after 22 and a half years, and I said, how angry and bitter are you? And he said, I'm not really angry and bitter at this point. How can he say that? You've been locked up like that. How can he say that?
Right now, he is I mean, look at him. He's in an incredibly stark, dangerous, scary situation. And at least in my experience, you can't indulge your worst emotions when you're surviving.
Has it changed you forever?
Yes. Yeah, understatement, yes. I mean...
You don't get over this.
No. I mean, this is a grief and a trauma that all wrongfully convicted people carry with them for the rest of their life. I have a podcast called The Truth About True Crime that I do with my partner, Christopher, and we look at different cases and try to really humanize the people that are at the center of them.
Right. All right, let's take a break here. Next, mistakes started happening from the moment police set foot on the murder scene, much like what some say happened to Rodney Reed. Mistakes that cost Amanda her freedom and may cost Rodney his very life. Plus, I'm going to introduce you to the music executive who has dedicated his life, we're talking about over 25 years, for fighting for people like Amanda and Rodney. He's going to join us next. We'll be right back.
I started my podcast about 3 years ago. I thought if I can help exonerees share their stories, and in so doing, help to prevent even one wrongful conviction from happening in the future, then let's do that.
And later,
That's just the extra tragic kernel to Rodney's story.
they can't screw it up and then disallow it because they screwed it up. I'm sorry, that doesn't work.
I'm really overwhelmed right now. I was looking down from the airplane, and it seemed like everything wasn't real. What's important for me to say is just thank you to everyone who's believed in me, who's defended me, who's supported my family. Thank you for being there for me.
Amanda Knox spent almost 4 years in an Italian prison after being convicted of murder of her British roommate, Meredith Kercher. Now Amanda has become an advocate for those who are wrongly convicted, and she's joining us today. Now, she's working with Jason Flom, a music executive best known for working with hugely famous musicians like the Rolling Stones and Katy Perry, but he was looking for more. And he is dedicating his life to advocating for people in situations like we're talking about today. Take a look.
I've been on the board of the Innocence Project for just about 25 years in various different aspects of criminal justice reform for equally as long. I'm very proud and humbled to have been a part of helping to prevent death sentences to be carried out. There are countless people doing hard time in American prisons for crimes that they didn't commit. I've interviewed dozens of them for my podcast, and now we're bringing these powerful human stories to your screens. I'm host of the podcast, Wrongful Conviction with Jason Flom. I started my podcast about 3 years ago. I thought if I can help exonerees share their stories, and in so doing, help to prevent even one wrongful conviction from happening in the future, then let's do that. You know, the alibis that you had that were basically airtight,
yes,
never made it in front of a jury.
Jury, right.
I interviewed Raymond Santana of the Central Park Five, Brendan Dassey, Amanda Knox. She's appeared on Wrongful Conviction. We also work together bringing awareness to these issues. She's a wonderful advocate, a wonderful public speaker, just a beautiful person, and I'm lucky to have her in my life. After your conviction was overturned, you remained in prison for several years.
I remained in jail for over three and a half years.
We all agree that the system isn't perfect. It's far from it. We owe it to our fellow Americans to fix this problem that we call mass incarceration.
Please welcome Jason Flom. Jason, you've been at this for over 25 years now, and you've talked to so many of these people, some still in, some that have been exonerated, and there are some commonalities among these cases.
We see a number of common threads through these wrongful convictions, including false confessions, as in Brendan Dassey's case, including tunnel vision, official misconduct. Eyewitness misidentification is the #1 leading cause of wrongful convictions. Those are just some of the factors.
And you've gotten 30, 40 people out of prison that were convicted and ultimately were exonerated, and that's got to feel good. I mean, all humility aside, that's got to feel good.
Oh, there's no better feeling that I know. I mean, you saw in the clip there, I walked Lenny Singleton out of prison, and, you know, it's an unbelievable feeling to know that you can have that type of an impact on somebody's life. And to your great credit, you know, what you're doing for Rodney is transformative. I mean, nothing less. And it's incredible to see the outpouring of support from people in your audience, among so many others, who have, you know, learned about this horrible injustice from you, and now then taken action and signed. How many signatures do we have on the petition now? Millions.
On 3 million.
3 million strangers who are coming and making their voice heard.
Was interrogated for 53 hours over 5 days.
And at one point, you were actually hit in the head.
I was hit, I was screamed at. They isolate you, they scare you, and they tell you this is the only way out for you. Anything that I said, they either said I was wrong, that I was lying. They called me a stupid liar.
Mi hanno chiamato stupida bugiarda.
That I had to stop lying and stop protecting whoever did it. They explained it that I was suffering from amnesia and that all I had to do was think really hard so that I would remember it. I was hit twice on the back of the head. I was scared out of my life. It's impossible. There's no trace of me in the room, so how would I have done that? No matter how bad things seemed, it still didn't change the fact that I didn't kill my friend, and so I couldn't be found guilty.
You were interrogated for how many hours straight?
So straight, I was interrogated for 53 hours over 5 days. They isolate you, they scare you, and they tell you this is the only way out for you.
Right. And at one point, you were actually hit in the head.
I was hit, I was screamed at. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I was very young. My roommate had just been murdered. I could just have easily have been murdered, and I was scared.
You all have seen the documentary Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, and both are still in jail at this point. And Brendan, at that point, was considered to have about a 70 IQ. He was led into an interrogation by a lawyer who just delivered him up and said, here you go, goodbye, without his parents, without legal representation. And that confession is admitted into evidence, and he is in prison today.
One of the convicted killers at the center of the popular Netflix docuseries Making a Murderer is asking for his life sentence to be reduced.
After years of court battles, the attorneys for Brendan Dassey are now pleading directly to Governor Tony Evers, asking for clemency.
In 2007, Dassey and his uncle, Stephen Avery, were sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Teresa Halbach.
We have a copy of the pardon petition Brendan Dassey's attorneys are filing with the state. Now, they're asking for one of two things: a pardon, asking the state to basically forgive his life sentence, or to reduce it and let him out of prison early.
One of the key elements of the prosecution's case was the confession Dassey gave to detectives. Dassey's current legal team and critics claim Dassey's confession was coerced.
He made you do something to her, didn't he? So he would feel better about not being the only person, right? Yeah.
There was not a lawyer there, and there was not a parent there. Did you bully a confession out of this boy?
No, I did not. We did not coerce him. That is wrong.
Since Dassey recanted that confession, his attorneys have been trying to get his conviction overturned. In 2016, Dassey did come within hours of being released from prison, but it was blocked by the Federal Court of Appeals.
In an episode of the popular Wrongful Conviction podcast released today, Dassey spoke from prison to host Jason Flom.
Were you scared, or were you just thought maybe if you just told the truth, everything would be fine? Or what was your thought process at that point?
Well, I just wanted it all over with, so I said whatever they wanted to hear, you know.
It's outrageous. When you talked to him, what was he focused on?
At the end of each episode of my podcast, I'll thank the guests and then sign off and leave the mic on for them to say whatever's on their mind. So Amanda was particularly, dropped some amazing knowledge at the end of her episode. And others have shared beautiful sentiments. So I asked Brendan, and he talked about Pokemon. That's what's important to him, and it really gives you a sense that he's a child trapped in the most adult nightmare that anyone could imagine.
People think that, like, hearing the guilty verdict was the worst experience of my life. No. My interrogation was the scariest, worst experience of my life, because I was made to feel like a crazy person. And reality slipped away from me. And yes, I was young, I was impressionable, but I was not young and impressionable like Brendan Dassey. It is terrifying.
When you break it down, and I have, there was no evidence against you either.
In Rodney's case, just like in my case, they went after the wrong person anyway.
did you rape and murder Stacey Stites?
No, I absolutely do not.
I first saw this story on Dr. Phil, and now I see more and more people are talking about it.
In recent weeks, celebrities like Dr. Phil, Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, and more have voiced support for Reed.
I came away from this interview with a very troubled heart, with a strong feeling that this man did not commit this crime.
I think at least the governor has to pause and look at the 2 million people who have signed a petition.
There are so many unanswered questions here that to put this man to death without a full and fair hearing of all the information that's available is an absolute travesty of justice. In Amanda Knox's case, we saw just how powerful the media can be. Amanda believes that it worked against her, but in the case of Rodney Reed, we're trying to harness the power of the media to save a man who many believe is innocent. On October 11th, we aired a two-part show about this. Here's the latest on what has transpired since I spoke to Rodney on death row.
I didn't do this crime, and here they are trying to take my life.
What do you make of the fact that they're not rushing to give you a new hearing and bring all of this to light?
The court is still unwilling to listen.
So far, more than 2 million people have signed an online petition to stop his execution.
A death row inmate in Texas faces execution in just 2 weeks unless a campaign can persuade the governor to intervene.
Here at the Capitol, Republicans and Democrats don't see eye to eye on much, but a bipartisan group of lawmakers agree Rodney Reed's case needs to be considered again.
Since we started beating the drum on this, 26 House members have now sent a letter. Then a bipartisan group of 16 state senators joined with a letter to Governor Abbott and the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles urging that a reprieve be granted, as did members of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. Senator Ted Cruz joined. The state lawmakers and other celebrities have gotten involved.
These chants,
write a read today, write a read tomorrow,
days before Rodney Reed is set to be executed.
We've been in the streets for 22.5 years.
Rodney Reed's family continues fighting for his innocence as they have for over 2 decades.
If we don't do the call to action, which is reaching out to the governor of Texas and others, I have no doubt this man is going to be executed. If we don't do something, this man's going to be executed. We've got almost 3 million signatures on the freeRodneyReedCase.com.
There is breaking news tonight in Texas. The state's highest criminal court halted the execution of inmate Rodney Reed.
The judges ruled that there may be new facts and evidence that could affect his conviction.
He was scheduled to die in 5 days for a 1996 rape and murder.
As the news broke Friday afternoon, the Rodney Reed camp celebrated the decision that saved his life.
I don't know when we're going to get opportunity to get that fair trial, but I know we're headed that way.
The Court of Criminal Appeals found the state may have suppressed evidence and presented false testimony during the 1998 trial. For example, Jimmy Fennell, Stacey Stites' then-fiancé, told a jury that he didn't kill her. Later, court docs show he confessed to another inmate in jail, saying, "I had to kill my N-word loving fiancé."
Give him a fair trial, listen to the witnesses, me amongst a lot of other people.
Honestly, just look at the evidence.
Well, as you see, when we do bring attention to it, people are outraged at what happened. And there are so many out there that don't get any attention. You're dealing with another case you mentioned. Say a few words about that one.
Yes, thank you. I was down on death row in Texas in the beginning of this year, visiting a guy named Rob Will. And Rob is just as innocent as Rodney is, and it's a terrible case. In this case, Rob was convicted of murdering a police officer, tragic crime. But he was in handcuffs at the time the officer was shot. He actually, the other person that was there went and shot the officer and then removed Rob's handcuffs and then went to shoot him again and Rob went to try to prevent that from happening, got shot through the hand. You saw that, right? And he was a victim of everything that could go wrong went wrong in this case. I mean, you can go to freerobwill.org and you'll see some of the things about his case. And a federal judge, Keith Ellison, said there are grave errors in every phase of these proceedings. And he said there's a total lack of scientific or eyewitness evidence in this case. There's no evidence. And yet there he sits on death row, pending a decision from the Fifth Circuit or intervention from the governor.
This is where I see the parallels here, because when you break it down, and I have, there was no evidence against you either.
I know, and what's frustrating about it is, in Rodney's case, just like in my case, they went after the wrong person anyway. I spent 4 years in prison, and that was horrible. I'll never get those years back. But there are people in prison right now who have been inside longer than I've been alive. Rodney has spent 22 years in prison. Think of this. This is a lifetime that people are losing. That's just the extra tragic kernel to Rodney's story, is they have plenty of evidence that not only exonerates him, but implicates another man.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me about this with Rodney. He's asked for DNA testing on what is probably the murder weapon, which was a belt that was worn by Stacey Stites at the time. They have denied testing it for DNA because they say it has been improperly stored since the crime and therefore could have been contaminated since then. Now, I'm sorry, but who is charged with storing the evidence? The state. They can't screw it up and then disallow it because they screwed it up. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. And there was a key piece of evidence, was Meredith's bra class that was traced to Raffaele's DNA, and that class found 46 days after the initial investigators contaminated it. Now,
even worse,
go ahead.
There was a semen stain found underneath Meredith's body on the pillow that her body was laying on, and they refused to test it because they said that, well, who knows when that semen stain happened to be left there. And it's like, she was raped and murdered. You test the semen stain, please.
You're the wrong guy to get mad, I'll tell you what. And they got you mad. So I want to give you a round of applause on that.
Yin Soering was only 18 years old when he was convicted of murdering his girlfriend's wealthy parents. Take a look at this.
A former UVA student is still fighting for freedom. He's behind bars, serving a life sentence for the murder of his then-girlfriend's parents in Bedford County. Yin Soering was convicted of killing his then-girlfriend Elizabeth Haysom's parents in 1985. Soering now claims he lied during his confession to protect his girlfriend.
Investigators in Central Virginia are putting pressure on Governor Terry McAuliffe to pardon a former University of Virginia student. It's believed to be the first time in Virginia's history an active sheriff wrote a letter to support a pardon request.
There's way beyond reasonable doubt in this case. This case isn't even close.
According to investigators, the most recent DNA report proves that the blood samples that initially matched Soering's type are not his. The profiles do not match.
That's irrefutable. The DNA is not wrong.
The bottom line is justice through science.
You've got the sheriff coming forward and saying this is wrong.
Which, amazing, because that's not always the case. A lot of times, law enforcement wants to protect law enforcement, but here's a man who's standing by justice.
And to have him come forward means a lot. And next, how you at home can join us in our fight for those who may have been wrongly convicted. We'll be right back. You know me, I'm Mr. Accountability, and if I thought this man was guilty, I would not be standing up and fighting for him. I'm just saying, if you believe what I believe, and you can see these shows on the YouTube, on the Dr. Phil channel, make up your own mind, and you can go to innocenceproject.org
Thank you for that. The Innocence Project appreciates your support more than words can say. Everybody, please do go there, learn more about it, get involved. There are ideas, ways that you can get involved when you go to the site. And I want to say, too, that even on a very basic level, having been down there and visited Rodney, I was there about a week after you were, and you left such an impression on him. I think that the meaning of your visit, the ripple effect that comes from that with him, with his family, even among people in the staff in the prison, the fact that you took your time, that you're taking your time day in and day out, I mean, you're the wrong guy to get mad, I'll tell you what, and they got you mad. It means a lot to me as well. As you said, 25 years of doing this, the fact that there are now people like yourself that are, waving this flag and taking charge of this particular case and trumpeting this issue is, it really means a lot. So I want to give you a round of applause on that.
We want him free, and I got a sneaking suspicion we're going to be seeing each other again.
Yeah.
So I want to thank Amanda Knox for being here. She didn't have to do this. It'd be awful easy for her to just absorb herself into the fabric of America, and instead, she's out there leading a fight, and God bless you for doing that. Really, and to Jason Flom, he's been fighting this battle for a long, long time, and he never gives up. So make sure you listen. Make sure you listen to both of their podcasts, The Truth About True Crime with Amanda Knox and Wrongful Conviction with Jason Flom. For more information on how you can join the fight to free the wrongfully convicted, go to drphil.com. And also, check out my new true crime podcast, Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil. We'll see you next time. Amanda, thank you so much. Great job.
Memories can kill ya, but I didn't hear ya. I thought that I could fly, but woke up on the asphalt. I swear there was the last time. I've always been naive. Call it.
You know we gon' get it.